Good morning, everyone. Welcome to News Center Maine's Political Brew. Glad you could be with us. We're joined today by former state senator and mayor of Portland, Democrat Ethan Strimling, and former Republican state senator Phil Harriman. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Pat. Hi, Ethan.
Morning. Good. Hey, Pat, I want to let you see I've got my agree or disagree mug. That's agree. This is disagree. I got a feeling I'm going to have the disagree side a little more today over some of these topics.
As long as you're giving us the visual cues, that's what's important.
I'll make sure you see it here first.
The Maine Republican Party seems to be stepping up its game to challenge Democrats in the legislature. For example, first-term Representative Sue Bernard, who is also well known in the county for her years doing TV news there, has filed to run against Senate President Troy Jackson. Phil, are Maine Republicans going to get to ride a Republican wave in 2022?
Well, I sure hope so, but it's not going to come from wishing about it. It's going to come from having a strategy and a budget and leadership to, first of all, recruit candidates. There's 186 elections going on next year in Maine just for the Maine House and Senate. That's a lot of work to recruit good candidates, help them get on message, and then actually campaign, which may seem like a lot of fun, but it's actually a lot of hard work.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Republicans are putting their chips into Sue Bernard taking out Troy Jackson, the guy who's never lost that district, having run up there for a dozen years, two separate times, and then came back and last two elections ran against established candidates and won easily. I think they've got another thing coming. You know, Maine does not usually go with trends. I do think it's going to be a hard year for Democrats around the country, but oftentimes Maine bucks that trend. And, you know, Troy's been a very strong Democrat up there fighting for working issues. Sue Bernard's been very conservative, not been supportive of workers up there, not good on prescription drugs. She's just not a good candidate. But I get it that the, landowners up there, they definitely want somebody who's in their pocket as opposed to somebody in the workers' pocket.
I think the key takeaway is that there's a qualified candidate willing to run against someone in such a very powerful position in the legislature. That's an indication that people are ready to run.
Just across the border, a big political announcement this past week. New Hampshire Governor Sununu is taking a pass on the U.S. Senate race and will seek re-election as governor instead. Now, Mitch McConnell and other Senate Republican leaders saw Sununu as the best hope of unseating Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan. Ethan, does Sununu's decision weaken the Republican Party's hopes of retaking control of the U.S. Senate?
Yeah, just one word. Whew. Thank goodness, because he would have been tough, no doubt about it. And I think the Democrats are breathing a sigh of relief. Look, Hassan's done a very good job. I think she's going to be able to hold that seat. The candidate that ran against her last time may run again, but Democrats are very likely going to flip Pennsylvania. They're probably going to flip Wisconsin. That means Republicans have to pick up 3 seats. That seems pretty unlikely. And I'll make one prediction right here, a year out. I think Marco Rubio is going to go down in Florida.
Wow. What makes you say that?
Just Val Demings is very strong. Remember, she was vetted as a vice presidential candidate. Her fundraising's been really good. Rubio only won by 3 points last time. I think she's somebody they need to watch out for. I think she's going to be a U.S. senator.
But Phil, what about that New Hampshire seat?
Yeah, well, I think Ethan probably has it assessed properly. The incumbent always has the it's their race to lose. But I also want to make note of Sununu's. There's a big difference running for a U.S. Senate seat where you're part of a committee, so to speak, as opposed to the governor of a state where you actually have the power under the Constitution to do a lot of, implementation, execution, and appointments and so forth. So I can appreciate that where his best political capital is used is right there in the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, people who have been governor generally don't enjoy Congress or the Senate very much.
Right.
The
Angus has been the exception, though. He's done a great job with this.
That's true. But of course, he also had time between the jobs, came back from what was political retirement. So maybe not eggs and apples and oranges here. Portland City Council recount was concluded. Brandon Major, who was chosen in that salad bowl drawing last week, wound up as the runner-up after the recount. Roberto Rodriguez wins by 35 votes out of more than 17,000 cast. It's a narrow win. Does it make the council lean more progressive? And what does that margin of victory say, Phil?
Well, it's very interesting to me that through ranked choice voting, I don't know, Ethan, how many times they had to run the numbers to get to the tied outcome and then draw it out of a salad bowl. And then on a recount, the numbers change. So I hope that the person who actually is going to raise their right hand remembers that they represent all of the city of Portland, not just the progressive wing of the city of Portland.
Yeah, no doubt about that. This is very substantial. If you look at the last 2 years, basically since 2019, there's been 20 elections in the city of Portland between the charter commission, city councilors, school board races, and progressives have won 20 of them. It has been just a tidal wave shift in terms of people saying we want bold action. And I think this election reflected that. Obviously, it was very close. But in the end, both candidates, I think, held themselves very well. They did the recount. It was very transparent. We got to see what actually happened. Roberto came out the winner. And now the biggest controversy we're still fighting about was was that a salad bowl or was it a popcorn bowl? Because that's pretty important.
If that's the biggest controversy, I guess we should be pleased. There's no accusations of fraud otherwise.
None.
The infrastructure bill that was passed by Congress offers big money for projects in every state. Ethan, do Democrats get a political boost from this or any bragging rights?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think the functionality of government was a good thing. I think passing the second half of Build Back Better is really going to be key in terms of what people will feel in their pockets. A lot of these projects are going to take some time to get going, but clearly billions are coming to Maine. That's really important. Our infrastructure is very old, whether it's internet, whether it's roads, bridges, all of that is now going to be fixed. It's vital that these happen. So yes, it will be good. I'll be curious to see how many Republicans out there start taking credit and showing up at groundbreakings for funds that they voted against. That will be irony for sure.
Well, you can be assured that they will show up for the groundbreaking ceremonies. All politicians want to take credit when money is being delivered locally. But I think the bigger question is, will the American people, particularly Mainers, feel like there is so much borrowing that went on that this is, over the top spending? Or will they say, you know what, the roads and bridges and the internet and the other true infrastructure improvements will help the economy and I support it, but that Build Back Better is way too much. If both of them pass, I suspect, Pat and Ethan, that people are going to react in a negative way because of the powerful borrowing repayments that we're putting on the next generation.
Well, but wait a minute, Phil, the second Build Back Better is paid for. So there's no debt that's tied to that. That's the big fundamental question. The infrastructure that Republicans actually, quite a number of them did support in the Senate anyway. That one, certainly I'll give you, there's borrowing there. But to say that Build Back Better, the one that's doing affordable child care, that's trying to make sure that we have universal pre-K, that's paid for, no debt.
And Phil, 13 Republicans in the House crossed over to vote in favor of the infrastructure bill, and they're being excoriated by many on the far right for doing so. Are you surprised that even a vote like this, which brings the bacon home, brings anger and even death threats to some of these members of Congress?
Yeah, that's a little too far a stretch to start threatening people who are serving you in a public policy arena. What I'm trying to suggest is that there's a lot of people on Main Street, Maine, who are very concerned about the level of borrowing. And if the borrowing is going to take place and actually go into roads and bridges and so forth, they probably can live with that. But if you think, Ethan, that people on Main Street, Maine, believe that this bill is fully paid for, I think you're going to find out that they don't believe. They're very concerned and skeptical.
Well, if they don't believe it, then they're believing something that's not true. That's the whole point of it. It's paid for. That 100%, that's the CBO analysis that we're going to receive. And it's paid for by taxing the wealthy, taxing the 1%, families that are making over $400,000 a year. I don't know how many of those people that you know. I don't know a whole lot of them, but most people in Maine don't even come close.
Speaking of money, inflation is rising, and there's plenty of political finger pointing about it, not surprisingly. And surveys show that Americans generally blame President Biden for the soaring energy and food prices. Ethan, are they right?
Well, they're not right. No, I mean, energy costs are rising all over the planet. So, we're a little worse than some places and a lot better than others. But Biden has to be aware of this, no doubt about it. I mean, it's a political reality that people are confronting. And it's another reason why the second half of Build Back Better needs to pass in order to help families that are struggling with inflation. You need to make sure people have the child care costs paid for, and that they get universal pre-K so they can reduce some of their expenses, that, we're trying to find ways to protect workers on the jobs. These are all things that will help families deal with some of this inflation. But no doubt, it's a political liability that has to be confronted. But is it Joe Biden's fault? Of course not.
Yeah, I see it differently. When the first act of the President of the United States is to sign an executive order and shut down the construction of a pipeline to stop issuing land leases to create a scarcity, then prices are rising. People should know as we speak that the home heating oil this winter is expected to almost double. How can you not say the president's policy is not putting inflationary pressure on our families? And then when you add on top of that the debt we just talked about to put more demands on scarce supplies, I think people are going to send a message and say, yes, President Biden, you are responsible for this.
Well, they may send a message, Phil, but is Joe Biden responsible for the similar inflationary rate in Germany or Austria or in Russia, which is double ours? Of course not, right? This is what's going on around the world because there's a supply problem, right? The supply chain has been broken. That has to be dealt with. We did inject money into the economy, no doubt about it, because we desperately needed it and have job growth.
And wages have been rising, and businesses are passing some of that along. But Ethan, another question is, does inflation give Joe Manchin another excuse to derail the Biden agenda?
Well, I think he's talking about using it. But again, as Biden and I think others are arguing, getting more money in the pockets of working Americans, which is what this second plan really does actually help counter some of those inflationary issues. Plus, because Build Back Better is fully paid for, it's not injecting more money into the economy. It's making sure that those who can afford to pay it, the uber wealthy, pay a little more in taxes and give that money to folks who need it desperately. So it's actually a reason for Joe Manchin to vote yes.
Closer to home, Phil, projections show Mainers are going to be paying considerably more for electricity this winter. Are Governor Mills and other incumbents going to pay a political price for that?
Yeah, there's no question about it that they set strategy, they set economic expectations, they can influence through regulation. The incumbent in office generally is credited or criticized for the results that are happening economically. And as we know, the demands for energy in our country are not going down. We're trying to change the source of that energy, but the need is not going down, and they're in scarce supply.
Yeah, I mean, I think incumbents, when the economy, when inflation is going up, utility costs, which are so real for so many Maine families, go up, incumbents feel it. But I would create one caveat, which is that incumbents will feel that pain from their constituents unless they actually try to do something or make clear that they're fighting for them. And that's what I think incumbents have to do. And obviously right now we just saw a huge vote against CMP. And while CMP does not control the supply, they do control the distribution. And the increases on the distribution side have been way higher than on the supply side. So CMP really has responsibility around this. And I think if the legislature begins to reflect the will of the people and acts and starts talking about how we are going to clamp down on CMP, whether it be a COU or the PUC or whatever, that I think is going to be an answer that people will respond to and say, okay, at least you're trying to do something.
Well, let's wrap up with our winners and losers in politics this week. Phil, we'll start with you.
The losers, I've got to go with the ongoing fear that is being put out there about the COVID statistics. I think it's time for us to recognize that we should go back to living our normal lives and make sure you're vaccinated and move on. The winners for me this week are our grateful state to say thank you to all of the veterans who served our country in whatever capacity. Thank you. You're a winner.
And Ethan Strimling.
Yeah, thanks for taking those words right out of my mouth, Phil. The veterans are certainly the winners this week. A good friend of mine, mentor, surrogate father, Jim, he was a veteran, served a long time ago. So I want to honor him as the winner this week. And the loser this week, Donald Trump, that court ruling that said he's going to have to show his papers, show what happened on January 6th. It's starting to feel very Nixon-esque. So Trump has got to start sweating pretty soon.
Ethan Strimling, Phil Harriman, thank you as always. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time. News Center Maine is back after this.